Today we're talking about how on earth you're supposed to balance studying for your LSAT and doing all of your written applications. Like, where are you supposed to find all the time in the day to do all those things? So this video is going to break that down for you and give you some tips on how you can balance those. Really, both of them are really important parts of your application. For those of you who are new, welcome. I'm Sydney Montgomery. I'm a law school admission consultant who specializes in working with first-generation and minority applicants. Today, we are covering three things. We are covering how to balance studying for the LSAT with your work and school obligations. We're talking about how to balance studying for the LSAT with your written application materials, not just your personal statement, but your diversity statement, your resume, any addenda that you have to write, all of the things that go into your law school applications, even your optional essays and scholarship essays. So we'll talk to you about how to balance those things. And then we're going to talk about how to create a timeline and a plan for getting through all of your written application materials so that you're not rushing or waiting till last minute, you're not forgetting about anything, and you feel like you've really put forth the strongest application possible. Now, today I am super excited because I have joining with us Peyton Thomas. Peyton Thomas is a former student of mine. She is also a current law school application bootcamp instructor. Peyton is going to be a first-year student at Vanderbilt in the fall. She is from Vienna, Virginia. She earned both her undergraduate degree in public relations and her master's degree in mass communications from the University of Florida. She is interested in pursuing entertainment law to fight for equality for Black musicians and creatives who shape the industry. I'm so excited to have Peyton with us. If you are taking my personal statement masterclass, and if you're not, you should be considering whether you should be. You will get to see actually her journey through her essays and her written materials. So it's really exciting. I'm really excited to have her with us today. So without further ado, I am going to bring Peyton on.
Hello.
Awesome. Hi, Peyton. But why don't you just start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself. I know I kind of read your background, but if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So as Sydney mentioned, my name is Peyton. I am originally from Vienna, Virginia, so grew up in the DC area. And then I went down to Florida for my undergraduate, so went far away for school. And there I was studying communications and actually took a class that was focused on mass media law junior year. And that's when I was first kind of thinking about law school, was introduced to the idea, and then really just got stuck on it. So I kind of started to develop my own hypothetical plan. And then as we kept moving, it just kind of fell into place. So I graduated a semester early from my undergrad in December 2019, and then was wrapping up a master's. So now I'm working and have been working since last July and applied for law school this past fall. So was a little bit crazy balancing LSAT and then the end of college into back to moving home, finding a job, getting ready to apply and dealing with master's program. That time was all craziness. So I personally am so grateful because along the way, about late August, I stumbled across Sydney, thank goodness. And she really just kind of helped direct that whole hypothetical plan that I had been brewing for about a year and a half at that point. So she was really imperative in helping keep me on track and just get to where I am now. And I honestly really enjoyed the law school application process. I'm sure Sydney will giggle because I was always a little ball of stress. And so basically, I really enjoyed it because I felt so much better having a support system here within Sydney and all of our communities, being within the boot camp and just being around other people who are also going through it, but also having a measure of accountability. So I'm so glad I got through it. and I'm super happy to be working as a boot camp instructor now. Just Sydney can't get rid of me. So I'm really excited to be continuing with her and just kind of helping you guys kind of figure out your process and get on your journeys to law school. So that's a little bit about me, long-winded, but
No, that
I'm
was
really
really
process.
that was really, really great. One of the things that I did want to talk about, and I can talk about it a little bit while you're getting that set up, is that a lot of times, or really the genesis for asking this question today, how do we balance studying for the LSAT and studying for the written materials, is because so many students will come to me and they will say, well, I want to work on the LSAT first. I want to get that out of the way. I want to focus on studying for the LSAT. And then, after I finish studying for the LSAT, I will then think about starting my written materials. I'll then think about starting my essays. If you are thinking about taking the LSAT in February or January, that is a perfectly fine plan for you to think about taking the LSAT and then working on your written applications. If you are planning on taking the LSAT in June or August or October, you really don't have time to focus on the LSAT first and then work on your applications. You really do need to be doing this in tandem. And I think that's a thing that a lot of students struggle with. They want to do one at a time, but as I kind of break down that timing with people, if you want to be applying in September and October, you can't take the August LSAT and then decide that you want to start your essays then. To be honest, taking the June LSAT and deciding you want to start your essays is, it's a little risky. And so I really wanted to ask you, Peyton, kind of what, I know that you were also working, and I think you were also going to school while you were taking the LSAT, studying for the LSAT, and you were in boot camp. So some people are listening and they're like, what? Wow. So can you just talk to me a little bit about how you were able to find that balance and what your general timeline looked like? And even you can talk about what maybe the first steps were that you had for applying to law school.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2020 was the year that kicked off my process. So that's when I started my first LSAT class. And that's when I said, okay, we're going to start. And that's when I got going. I was on track to take the March LSAT, and I wanted to start early, like Sydney said. I wanted to get my applications in October, November latest. So I wanted to be on the earlier side, and I wanted to get the test out of the way. But then once COVID came up, the March exam and all of those couple exams got a little bit crazy. So I ended up moving. I took the exam in June, and then I took it again in August. And then I took it one more time in October, which I wasn't hoping for, but that's just kind of how it ended up. But yeah, so I started the LSAT then. It was kind of almost a year-long process. But I think it's really important to stay ahead and stay on top of the LSAT. And remembering that it is just one part of your application, I think it's so easy to get looped up in just having to get the perfect score and just really only talking about the LSAT. But like Sydney said, there are plenty of other components. You've got to write your essays, which is more than just your personal statement. You've got to get your resume in order, figure out your letters of rec and all of that. So I really leaned on Sydney to help Sydney me through that latter half and kind of started LSAT on my own. So LSAT, I kind of gave you a little bit of that timeline. And then I knew I wanted to get my applications kicked off around August. So that's when I started boot camp with Sydney, starting in the September boot camp. And balancing with work and studying, I really, looking back, I'm not sure how I did it. But I think there are a couple really important things to remember during that time, is just that it's all about finding the balance and remembering that it's going to be a temporary stress. So I remember I would just get super worked up and really frustrated in the moment, having a ton of things to balance and navigating all of them. But I think remembering to take things one step at a time is extremely helpful. So specifically with your law school journey, I think figuring out what your process is going to look like. So what I recommended and what I started with was, okay, let's tackle the LSAT. Let's figure out what the process and plan is going to look like for that. So I told you I started early in the year with the hopes of applying by September, October, November. And then I wanted to have all of my essays and everything done by October. So I wanted to kick that off around August just to give myself some time to really focus on figuring out my brand, I guess, as an applicant, because I think it's really important to, as Sydney touches on all the time, who are you as a student and what do you want to go to law school for and what are you going to do? I think that's really important in branding yourself in your application. So kind of thinking about some of the stories, personal statement, which professors was I going to ask for my letters of rec and all of that. So finding the balance, but I think for me, finding a plan, long story short, and really keeping yourself accountable to that, which I think is really helpful through having weekly time set for application and having your set schedule for LSAT and taking your practice exams at the same time, at the same place, on the same day. Those kind of things, they seem like little just nitpicky, like, oh, they might help, but probably not that much. But they're small changes that really add up. And then most importantly, remember to take a break. That's the most important thing, especially when it comes to LSAT studying. I remember there would be days when I would be sitting down for 8 hours studying and not have retained a single anything that I learned about the LSAT because I was completely burnt out. So you have to know your limits and you have to remember to go outside and take a walk, breathe and not think about your law school applications, remember to hang out with your friends. And it can feel like a lot with school or work or whatever else you have going on. We all have lives and we're all in such different places, but I think it's just really important to find the balance and remember to find good times, but then also remember why you're doing it and that it's all going to pay off. I promise. I promise.
No, that's really good advice. Yeah. So I think that the note about taking breaks is super important because, well, I mean, I can just speak for myself. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the good age of 26, and I can't just hunker down sometimes and study for 3 hours in one straight block. So when we're talking about balancing LSAT studying with work and school or balancing LSAT studying with writing your essays, I like to say you don't need to try to figure out when you're going to have 3 hours of uninterrupted time. You can. That is one way of doing it. I did not do that when I studied for the LSAT, and I just instead found half-hour to 1 hour blocks and several of those throughout the day that helped me because then I could work on the LSAT while I was commuting. I could work out the LSAT while I was, in lunch. I could work out the LSAT while I was making dinner or eating breakfast. When you start to find different ways to be flexible with your time instead of trying to find huge chunks. And don't get me wrong, huge chunks of time is absolutely great. And a lot of people, there's a lot of research about how you are productive when you have those huge chunks. But for some people, that's just not possible. And I think what happens is they're looking at their calendar and they're like, well, I don't have chunks. Or even if I have the chunks for the LSAT, I have no more time for writing my essays. So actually in my personal statement course, my new course that I'm pre-selling now and will fully launch by the end of the month, but I'm pre-selling it now at an early bird rate. I have 3 different timelines. I have a 4-week timeline, an 8-week timeline, and a 12-week timeline. But remember, this is only for your personal statement. So I basically give you different options of how you can find the time in your busy schedule to work on your essays, whether that is looking like you're working on it an hour a day or you're working on it maybe 6 hours each weekend. There's definitely different ways for you to be thinking about it. And once you kind of set your foundation, I think that that is really the key to getting a lot of your essays done in an efficient time, making sure that you have an efficient brainstorming process, making sure that you're outlining with good intention, that you're outlining with a good structure in mind, because once you have the structure, then okay, I have an hour, I can write this paragraph. I have 2 hours, I can write this paragraph, but you already know what you're going to be writing. And that's why I think the structure and the brainstorming process is so important. And those are the things that we also break down in the boot camp as well. But even when you're talking about your LSAT study plan, I think that's a little harder if you're doing self-study. But if you're in a program or a course or anything that has a timeline mapped out, you want to be doing the same thing. Okay, this is when the course ends. This is when it starts. How many hours do I need to be doing every day? Where can I put those hours? It's really about, honestly, like creating a calendar, creating a system, and really holding yourself to it for a few months. Like Peyton was saying, it is going to be kind of a busy couple of months, especially if you're just getting started with either process. If you haven't started the essays and you haven't started studying for the LSAT, these next 4 to 5 months are going to be like very busy. But it will pay off, and it is like a temporary stressful time for a long-term future happiness and bliss as an attorney. Peyton, I wanted to talk to them a little bit about how this process kind of ended for you. Like, we talked a little bit about the beginning of your journey and you finding that time and that balance. How did you end up with your applications, with your scholarship money? Where are you going next year?
Yes. So, spoiler, I did put it in my little bio, but I'm going to be going to Vanderbilt next year. So, once I submitted my applications, first, I have to say, huge wait. It was such an exciting moment, and just to be all done. And so then after that, I was just kind of ready to wait. And so I actually just heard back. I applied in October, and I had to wait for my final LSAT scores to be received from that October exam, but I did submit in October. And I actually just heard back my last notification last week. So
oh my goodness.
That just kind of shows you how long the process can be.
When was the first time you heard back from a school?
So the first time I heard back from a school was in January, I believe. So mid-January, mid to early January. Or actually, yes, I think that's when. So that was the first time for me. I know, again, though, that's something that Sydney touches on, that you really never know with law school admissions. You know, it's really going to look different for everyone. But I had no rejections, which was really exciting.
Amazing. Amazing.
So that was big. But a lot of really incredible acceptances, way more than I was anticipating. And again, I could just visualize a Sydney eye roll as, be confident and know that you deserve to go to all these great schools. But I had a fantastic turnout. I thought I was deciding ultimately between Vanderbilt and USC. Those were my two final choices. As mentioned in my bio, I'm interested in entertainment law. So I want to focus a lot on intellectual property and contracts, and hopefully break into the music industry one day and help represent some artists. But I was really looking into locations like New York, LA, big music hubs where even if I'm not directly involved within the law school, can have a good immersive experience in the entertainment culture and all of that. So I think it all panned out really well. And with scholarship money, I did try to do some negotiation to not success, but that's okay. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And I do think either way, it was really, really important for me weighing my decisions, having those different scholarship offers. And I think it's important too to remember, I personally, I don't think I had the highest LSAT score, for one, but I still had some really incredible scholarship opportunities. So I just say that just to remind people that, when you're applying to law school and when they're considering all these things, they're considering you as a whole person and not just based on, oh, I didn't get this LSAT score, so I'm not going to get a full ride scholarship at any law school. That's not the truth. So I think just to stay optimistic, and I think for me, it worked out really well. But I think I am an applicant where the value of kind of the total parts really showcased. And I think that was something that I really wanted to emphasize, and working with Sydney, just to kind of say, set my brand, like I said, and promote myself. And I think it worked out pretty well because I had some really great acceptances, and I'm super excited with how everything turned out. So am I a little scared for law school? A tiny bit. But I'm super pumped, and I think it all worked out perfectly. And there were a lot of factors to consider in that decision of, where to pick once you get those admissions decisions and navigating wait lists and all of that. But I'm happy and I'm grateful for guidance.
Yeah, and I'm very, very, very proud of you. I want to know what you're most excited about in the fall. Like, what are you most excited about for law school?
I think I'm most excited for the style of learning of law school, which I think is maybe a hot take. I don't know, because I think people think, oh, cold calling, terrible. Which, probably will be because so I was doing a lot of, work in more like strategy, big picture things, but I'm excited to really sit down and, learn the law and learn in that way that you learn in law school. That's really going to be enriching and engaging, and build upon one another, and just kind of having all these pieces come together each year that are really going to, be the base of my career. That's what I'm really excited for. I think it's going to be really fulfilling, and I like that style of learning. So I'm really excited for that. And I'll just touch in what I'm nervous for. I'm nervous for the adjustment, and just going from working life. So I've been working 9 to 5 and kind of adjusted to that, and just moving to a new city. And I think all of those changes, it's a little scary, but I'm super excited. I think it's going to be a really good change and a really great new journey.
No, I think so too. And I didn't mind cold calls. I think you have to have confidence in yourself that your intellect is not defined by one answer to a question. And
Yeah.
neither is your worth as a lawyer. If you get a question and you don't know, you can just say, I don't know. I think people are so like, oh my God, but then everyone will think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or the professor will think, listen, everyone doesn't know things. I don't know things often. I said, I don't know many times. I still got really good grades in law school. I mean, grades. Harvard has basically a non-grading system. But I was actually looking at my transcript the other day, and I was like, huh, I did better than I remembered I did. But I also said, I don't know when I didn't know. And I think when you have that confidence, like, I know I'm smart, I know I'm worth it, I know that I can stand tall, as a law school student, as a lawyer, I don't need to prove how smart I am to anyone else in the room, not my classmates, not the professors. Then I think some of the stress about cold calls kind of come away a little bit, because it really is coming from a place of feeling like you have to justify like your position at law school, like that imposter syndrome. And so when you can kind of recognize that your worth and your deservedness of that spot is not based on whether or not you fully understand everything, and you're there to learn. And if you were supposed to know everything perfectly, you wouldn't have to go to law school. I think that can be a weight off of your shoulder. So we were talking about those three things: balancing studying LSAT with work and school. And Peyton, you gave a lot of really great examples about how you did that. And then generally, it is about being flexible with your time and flexible with where those hours are going. When we talked about balancing your LSAT studying with your written application materials, it's really about creating a plan and creating a timeline, both with your LSAT studying and also with your essays. And then in terms of creating a schedule for completing your written applications, right, that kind of goes into that second point, looking at the totality of everything that you have to write and figuring out how much time you need. Hint, you need at least 3 to 4 months. But figuring out how much time you need and making sure that the structure and the foundation of your written materials is so tight, is so strong, that you will be able to just kind of go in and, like, it's a well-oiled machine. You're going to go in and just plug and chug from your stories, from your outlines. You're going to write those essays. Your paragraphs are going to be well structured, and you're not wasting time. I think the real key here, when you're talking about balancing and juggling multiple things, is that you have to be efficient in every single area. So if you're wasting time because you're self-studying and you don't really know, you don't have a plan, you're just kind of winging it, You can get by with self-studying, but it's not going to be the most efficient way to do it, and it's not going to be the most like time efficient. If you are sort of meandering through your essays and you're just going to sit down and try to write and then figure out why it doesn't sound good and then figure out what you can do, and then again, you can, get somewhere with that process, but it's not going to be the most time efficient. So when you are thinking about juggling multiple obligations, you need to say, how can I be efficient in all of these areas? How can I make sure that I'm not wasting any time in any of these areas? So Peyton, I know that we talked at the beginning, you are a boot camp instructor for the law school application boot camps. I'd love for you to just tell me, first off, your experience with boot camp, why you liked it so much that you wanted to come back and teach, and then maybe a little bit more about the materials and the structure of that. And of course, I can speak to it as well. For those of you who are not quite sure, the law school application boot camps are a 10 to 12 week program. They include 10 1-hour group sessions. You're available to meet with me in office hours every week. You also get 2 private sessions with me, and you get some outside editing time. So there's a lot of hands-on guidance that you get through the process, and Peyton helps with some of those group sessions. So take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited to continue through with boot camp because I couldn't say it enough, say it to everybody in my life, having boot camp really kept me on track for my law school application process. So I started in the September boot camp. And so as Sydney described, we meet weekly. And I really liked that personally because that was always my set hour of application time and learning and focus to prepare me for that next week and to ask Sydney whatever questions I had and follow up in office hours if I need to. But I personally really loved having that set time where I knew I was going to be covering the next step of the process or, just building upon whatever was happening from the week before and really just having a consistent flow of moving forward. It's also really helpful because Sydney, obviously, once you have your time in boot camp where you're kind of going through all of the material, but you have everything available in your course platform. So going back to all of the different guides for outlining and for tips for finding your letters of recommenders and all of that, if you ever have a question, it's likely answered there. So it's always super helpful to just have any information you could need with examples and templates and everything. So I love that just because it kind of helps guide you and put you in the right direction, especially for me. I didn't know anything about applying to law school, so I really needed help on that front. I also really valued the opportunity to kind of work with other students. And so while we're all learning together in the boot camp, you do have your individualized time to work on your own things and kind of get some critique and feedback based on where you are. But I really liked being able to connect with other people who were exactly where I was and just kind of talk. And we could say, hey, I'm really stressed about my story matrix. Is anybody else? I have no idea what to write about, what has happened in my life. I don't know. So it was really good just to have another crew of people that are with you every week and kind of just to help motivate you and follow along and ask questions and see where other people are applying to schools and ask what they're interested in and all of that. I just really liked that process because I didn't really have that with all of my friends are working or in their own master's programs. I don't really have any friends in law school or applying to law school or any family members for that matter either. So I loved having that smaller community within obviously the bigger community. There's barrier breakers, and then just being a part of any one of Sydney's groups, I think it's just super helpful to have that community because I wouldn't have that otherwise. And that's something that I really value just in all parts of life. So it was really helpful and it's really motivating and supportive. So I think my main favorite things are the structure and that accountability, but then also the community and having the people to work with you and just kind of give you some support and guidance along the way.
Yeah, I'm really big on community building. I mean, so Peyton, you're also connected to the Beyond Barriers alumni community. So all of my past students, whether one-on-one or working with me in boot camp, are connected with each other, and you'll have that community for the rest of your life. So you'll have that community as you go through law school. You'll have that community as you're applying for your first job out of law school. I have people on there who are available to serve as mentors as well. Some students are already out of law school. They're already working at a firm. And so there's a lot of areas for you to mentor and be mentored. And so even when your boot camp ends, it doesn't mean that you had community for 12 weeks and then you're just like back to being on your own. I don't really operate like that in my life. I like to keep people around. And so I like to make sure that you have people that you can go to. Yes, your boot camp cohort, but also the wider consulting community of students that have gone through my programs, that you can, maybe there's some people that are going to go to the same school as you next year, and you can kind of link up and, get to know people before school even starts. That's my thing. Not just get you to law school, but help you thrive once you're there.
Yeah. And another follow-up, kind of something I didn't touch on as much, but just kind of the actual substantive content of boot camp. Another thing I loved was just how comprehensive it is from every step. So from the story matrix, if you're familiar, mapping out different stories from different parts of your life. That's kind of something I definitely would have never actually taken the time to sit down and critically think about before writing my personal statement or outline if I hadn't had Sydney introduce that to me. And just knowing that every topic was covered even deeper than you would have thought. So personal statement is much more than just, oh, here's a 2-page paper. You have your outline, you have your story matrix, you have all of your brainstorming, all of your planning. But it's the same thing with every piece of the process, which I really loved, with your letters of rec, with your diversity statements, with any addenda, and even for advice and figuring out how to navigate wait lists and what to do after the fact, making your school list, figuring out where you're going to apply. All of those things, any kind of question that you would have regarding the law school process and applying is covered in boot camp. And that was a huge factor for me too. Again, going into it knowing I didn't know anything and wanting to have some guidance, I wanted an opportunity that was going to be really immersive and really comprehensive. And that is one thing that I love about the boot camp.
Well, Peyton, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experience, for also sharing your time with students in boot camp. I know that all the students have really enjoyed getting to meet you as well. And I know that the whole community is wishing you nothing but success and happiness.
It's an honor, truly. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, and we will talk to you soon. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you want to learn more about working with me, you can visit my website at smontgomeryconsulting.com. Make sure that you rate a review or subscribe or like if this episode was helpful to you. And if you're looking for even more inspiration, check out my podcast, Mindful Prayers for Students, where I provide encouragement, mindfulness, and prayer on your academic journey. I'll see you guys next time.